The slang term for catfishing is when someone creates a fake online profile to trick someone who's looking for love. Moose hunting during the rut is kind of like that, but with guns. The Best of the West has been honored to be a part of dozens of moose hunts over the years, from the backcountry of Wyoming to Alaska and all across Canada. North America recognizes 4 different subspecies of moose. The smallest of the 4, the Shiras moose, ranges throughout the Rocky Mountains. The southern region of Canada is home to the eastern and western variety, and the 4th subspecies, the Alaskan moose, is the largest and lives all throughout Alaska and the Yukon. If you want to hunt moose, then you better have a solid exit strategy. In many cases, putting a bull down is the easy part of the hunt. The average Alaskan bull moose weighs around 1,400 pounds. Quartered and caped, you can plan on a minimum of 700 pounds of meat, cape, and antler that needs to be packed out. The rutting bull on the move is no easy thing to catch up with. Having an effective range of 900 yards can be the difference in the hunt of a lifetime or a really expensive hiking trip. The Husqvarna Advantage allows for dialing both distance and windage from a single turret without any guesswork, holdovers, or calculations. You simply dial and squeeze. We're privileged to be back in Alaska hunting with a team from Stephen Lake Lodge, located in the Talkeetna Mountains, just a short flight from Anchorage. This prime moose habitat provides hunters an iconic Alaskan moose hunting experience. When a window of opportunity opens on a moose hunt, you'd better act fast. Last time Team Husqvarna moose hunted at Stephen Lake, a big bull showed up out of nowhere. And with only its vitals showing, we still managed to thread the needle and pin up another successful hunt with the team at Stephen Lake Lodge.
Good job. That's a nice bull. Oh, congratulations, man. That's awesome. Thank you. You did an awesome job.
You know, Best of West has had numerous hunts with Stephen Lake Lodge. We've done some other moose hunts. We've done some grizzly bear and some black bear hunts up here. And, you know, just last month, our cameraman shot a Dall sheep up here. And so I was very happy when John Madsen called and said that he had a spot available for prime rut towards the end of September there. And, you know, I jumped on it as soon as I could. You know, I often get asked, what is it like to hunt in Alaska? I think a lot of my friends and family and people I meet at trade shows, they've watched episodes or YouTube videos of hunting in Alaska. And the best way I can describe hunting in Alaska is it's a love-hate relationship. Either you're loving your time up there or you're hating your time and you want to go home. And mostly just because of weather. It can be 65 degrees and sunny, and then 2 hours later, you could be in a blizzard. It's pretty rough up there. The big thing is the rain and the moisture. You're constantly wet. You're constantly trying to be drying out clothes or even your sleeping bag or your tent. That's kind of what I tell people is Alaska is great at times, but miserable at other times. Once you leave Alaska, you're always itching to go back. Flying into the lodge, it's pretty neat because you know you're going into Anchorage and then you're jumping on a small plane, either a Super Cub or a 206. It's usually about an hour flight to the lodge from Anchorage. It's pretty neat. You go over some pretty neat country, and especially here in September, you get to see a lot of the changing colors. You see a lot of yellows and oranges, and it's very pretty. A lot of people in their mind, they think Alaska and they think of mountain hunting and they think they're at a high elevation, but you know, you're really not. You're starting at sea level there in Anchorage. And so there at the lodge, you're really only at 1,500 feet. So you're flying over a lot of valleys and rivers and streams. And of course, when I'm looking out the window of the 206, I'm always trying to find some animals. And so far, every time I've flown in that plane, I've been able to find some caribou, or we'll fly right next to a little mountain range and you'll see little white dots resembling your Dall sheep up on the mountaintops. And every once in a while, you'll get lucky and see a grizzly bear walking across some of the meadows. That's probably one of my favorite experiences, is just flying into the lodge itself, just the scenery and the beauty of Alaska. I like to fly into camp 2 days early if I can. For sure 1 day, but if the outfitter allows you to, it's always nice going 2 days early because you get to acclimate to the weather a little more. You get to acclimate to sometimes the elevation depending on where you're at. I always for sure like to take a day there to check my zero on my rifle. I flew in 2 days early. I talked to John Madsen, the outfitter here at Stephen Lake Lodge, and he said, your guide actually is finishing up a hunt. We can actually get you out there earlier if you want to try and do a hunt unguided and self-guided, or you can sit here and wait at the lodge for a couple more days and wait for your guide to finish up a hunt. And you know, kind of just that competitiveness in the back of your mind, you just want to try and do it yourself. And so that's what we did. I talked with our camera guy and he agreed to do it, and so we jumped in the plane. And we were a little worried because neither one of us have any experience in calling, and we knew that was going to be a big factor when it came to hunting these moose in the rut, is calling. I've been on a couple other moose hunts where I wasn't the hunter, but I knew how to make the noise of a moose call, but I just didn't know anything about timing and all of that. And so this was just mostly a crash course on moose calling, and we kind of had some tips from some of the other packers and guides and stuff that were in camp there, and off we went. And we flew in there with a Super Cub, smaller plane than what we flew into the lodge for. These Super Cubs are pretty incredible. They can get you into real tight spots and they don't need very much room to take off. In fact, when we were landing, I was a little worried that, man, I don't know if this is long enough, but those pilots they're pretty skillful. And that's another thing about Alaska is, you know, you need one of these Super Cubs just to go out anywhere if you want to hunt in Alaska. What I like about hunting with John here at Stephen Lake Lodge is he spends the time and the money into pre-scouting, so his clients have the best opportunity. And we knew this area produced good bulls. We've seen pictures from other clients. We've had some of our own clients here at Best West go up there. So we knew that area was going to produce good bulls and that we had an opportunity at a good mature bull. That's what I liked about this area, is because we were basically glassing up on a knob right next to the tent. We woke up every morning and we were glassing and we were hunting straight from the tent. For this specific hunt, being in Alaska, I chose to go with a 300 PRC. A lot of people still don't know a whole lot about it, but it's a newer cartridge from Hornady. The best way to describe it is you have a 300 Win Mag and you have a 300 Ultra Mag, and it kind of falls right in between the two there. I built this gun to be a lighter weight gun. I used a 22-inch carbon fiber barrel. I used our Signature Series stock, and then our newest scope that Husqvarna offers is a 5-20 by 50 tactical. So when you're in Alaska and you're doing a self-guided moose hunt, you have to be prepared. You got to make sure you read the regulations, or else it can come back to really haunt you. You can't hunt on the same day that you flew in, and then to be able to kill a mature bull, it needs to have either 3 brow tines on one of the 2 sides, or it has to have a spread of at least 50 inches. And so on the first morning of the first day that I could actually hunt, we got up pretty early. We were pretty antsy. We started calling right off the bat. And being on another hunt where my brother Daryl ended up harvesting a moose up in British Columbia, I remember hearing bulls when we would call. And I remember it wasn't like elk that were very responsive. I mean, you'd call for a moose up there in British Columbia sometimes, and it'd be half an hour before you'd hear something respond to you. And so it's a little trickier with moose compared to elk because they're not as responsive and they're not as active, especially if you're there in the early part of the rut. Once the rut's gone full blown, then they respond a lot quicker. But I could tell after, the first few hours of calling that, these moose were probably just beginning the rut. And so after calling for a few hours and there was no responses, we decided to go for a little bit of a hike and start glassing from some vantage points that we had. And so we hiked about, a good 30, 40 minutes over to a spot there, to a vantage point. Looked off into the distance, and this was a spot that I was kind of already glassed and kind of already had a mental picture in my head. I could tell there was something a little bit different, a little bit odd. I threw my binos on them real quick and realized that it was a moose. So we decided to sit down and throw the spotting scope on them and see what kind of bull this was. And it was pretty clear right off the bat that this was a sublegal bull. And so we sat there and watched them. It was pretty interesting and pretty informative. And it was a good experience to watch how this bull would react when we'd call. It would sit there and it would stop and look back at us, and it'd come closer, and then finally I think decided it wasn't going to come after us and pursue to see what we were up to. And so it actually took off back into the timber. We ended up continuing to glass and call and glass and call, and that's kind of just the game of hunting in the rut. If you travel too much, you can actually do a lot of damage. You can spread your scent a little too much, and so we knew we didn't want to go too far. We wanted to be patient. That's what we ended up doing. Day 2 of the hunt, woke up again really early, started calling, and it was a pretty long day, pretty slow day on day 2. We didn't see an animal on day 2 at all, except for in the evening, right before it was too dark to really even see. We started finally getting a response, and when you get a response from one of those moose, it goes from 0 to 100 really, really quick. Even when I saw that bull break out of the timber and I realized that it's the same bull from yesterday, it was still pretty cool. And we called that bull in within a couple 100 yards, and we probably could have called it in closer, but we decided it'd probably be best just to stop calling and leave it alone, and we ended up going to bed. And day 3, it was kind of the same deal. Woke up real early, really early, made some breakfast, and then started calling and glassing. I had 3 different vantage points from where I was glassing that I would kind of go back and forth, and it turned into a kind of a head game. You started getting a little discouraged. You're wondering, man, if I'm at this glassing knob and I'm calling and I'm glassing right here for 3 hours, am I missing out on another vantage point where heck there could be moose? And so I was having a hard time staying put. I kept on glassing, calling, and then only sitting there for 20, 30 minutes, and then I'd move over to the next spot because I was getting real antsy and started overthinking everything. And that's when I decided I just need to calm down and realize I still got 8 days of hunting. There's still a lot of time for a lot of things to happen. That was pretty much how the whole morning and kind of the mid-afternoon went. And then we decided to come back in for an early dinner and rest a little bit. So we made some dinner and was just kind of sitting around talking. Our camera guy, he got up. He was actually looking over this pond that we were kind of glassing over, and he noticed that something looked a little off, and he noticed right next to the pond that there was a big dark object. He noticed it moved, and so he kind of got excited and told me, Jared, you need to get your spot and scope out, and I think we got a moose down here. And at first I got all excited, and then I told myself to calm down and before I make any mistakes. And then I started thinking, I was like, it's probably just that same little bull that we saw on day 1 and day 2. And so I didn't get too excited. I handed the spot and scope to Terrence, our camera guy, and he got down on it, and I was gonna go get some of my other gear just in case. And as soon as I grabbed my gun, Terrence said, Jared, you gotta hurry, this is a legal bull. That's when it went from being a kind of a boring hunt to you better get your stuff and get a shot off real quick, or this might be your only opportunity. And so I got down, ranged him with my range-finding binos, and ranged him at right at 700 yards. And that's exactly when I thought in my head, man, I'm sure glad that I designed and brought this rifle that was capable of shooting 700 yards.
There you gotta take them.
The Best of the West is brought to you by Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Huntin' Fool, The Best of the West Shooting Systems, Defiance Custom Actions, The Wild Sheep Foundation, Huskama Optics, and LongRangeStore.com. For more information about hunting Dall sheep, Alaskan moose, or grizzly bear at Steffen Lake Lodge, please contact John Madsen at 907-331-8045 or go online to SteffenLakeAlaska.com. For more information about the products and gear used on today's show, please visit LongRangeStore.com or call 1-866-754-7618.
There you gotta take them.
Nice shot, hit him again. Keep shooting. Oh, he's done. You got a bull.
That's when the adrenaline really hit me and realized that I just shot a moose on a hunt that I was expected to be guided on, and here I am not guided, and you know, it did feel pretty rewarding. Both me and Terrence talked about it, and to do it yourself, it was pretty rewarding. So a lot of people ask me, what's the Husqvarna advantage? I always tell them, you know, you spend all this time preparing for hunts. You spend time on Onyx maps, you're looking at your equipment and your gear and clothing, camo, all that stuff. And a lot of times, I think a lot of people kind of overlook optics. With the Husqvarna advantage, what's nice is you don't have to rely on any fancy rangefinders, any apps on your phone. Your ballistics and everything are etched into that turret. So as long as you can get an accurate range on your target, you're gonna be able to hit and kill whatever you're shooting at. If you're gonna have a Husqvarna scope and take advantage of the Husqvarna system, you need to put it on a good rifle. We build our own custom rifles. We invest a lot of money into innovating and trying to come out with a good hunting product. And when you can put a Husqvarna scope on a rifle, you now have a system, and your chances of success while hunting have just tripled. So here we are up in Alaska with Stephen Lake Lodge. We're just kind of right outside the Talkeetna mountain range here. John Madsen is the owner of Stephen Lake Lodge, and he gave us the opportunity to either have a guided hunt or do a D.I.Y. And me and Terrence have never done a D.I.Y. Moose hunt, and so we were kind of up for the challenge, kind of learned how to call on the fly. So the first day we actually called in a small moose, small sublegal moose, but it was cool to see some action from the get-go. Then it got real quiet on us. The second day, called and glassing and waiting. It was pretty quiet the first 2-3 days there, and didn't know what to expect. I thought, man, this might turn into a really long 10 days. And so third day, kind of same thing in the morning. Started glassing and calling and nothing, no responses. The forecast was calling for some rain, and so we decided now's a good time to go into the tent and start making some lunch and eat. The rain kind of passed. Sun was shining and a little bit of blue sky. And as we came out of the tent, this bull happened to just be down by this lake, coming in for a drink of water, and from where we were camped up, it was about 700 yards. Got proned out with this 300 PRC is what I decided to take up here, and dialed the turret to 700 yards and took 2 shots, and we got him down, and it was awesome. Couldn't be happier with this bull. We already got him taped out, and he's going to be right at about 55 inches. I'd like to thank John Madsen for kind of giving us the pointers up here and flying us into this spot here. This is one of his really good spots that it seems like he kills bulls every year out of this spot. Couldn't thank him enough. This is kind of a hunt of a lifetime, and to kind of do it yourself, this feels a little more rewarding, and it's awesome. First bull. I actually realized after getting down to the moose that, man, these things are huge, and we're probably gonna need some help. And so I sent John a message on our inReach saying, hey, we have a moose down, and if you got any spare packers, we could really use them. John was super happy for us that we got it on our own, and sent in some packers, and that's when the real work began. The moose itself, I mean, it's heavy, and we had to pack it, and you're soaking wet, your legs are burning, and especially if you have to do any uphill climbing. That was part of the hunt, you know. In the moment, you think, man, this is terrible. Like, why did I do this? And then a couple days after the hunt, when you're sitting at home, you realize this is why we do it. You realize that you'd go back in a heartbeat to do it again. I'm just extremely thankful that John Madsen reached out and gave us the opportunity to do this hunt. Super grateful for all those who involved that all the packers that came in, Seth and Joe and Jacob that came in to help pack it out. They just made it a lot more enjoyable experience and made the workload a lot easier, and couldn't be more thankful for those guys.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Best of the West. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest long-range hunting adventures.